So this is the really quick lecture, I know I keep saying that, over Troy and the Iliad, mostly the Iliad. And I had to switch spots in my study because the window keeps giving too much light and the speaker on my other laptop or my other PC is really crappy. Okay, so the Iliad is something that you could read a summary for and that's fine. But you do need to have some point of reference to the Iliad because we're going to read the Aeneid later, and the Aeneid is covered heavily on the final. The Aeneid is a required text of the class. The Iliad is not, but I always feel the students do better when they have some of the backstory for Aeneid, even though we're not going to do Aeneid right away. We're going to do Oedipus because we're trying to stay in chronological order. So the Iliad, Oedipus, and then Aeneid, and then as our midterm. So we only have 3 more big texts to do, which is crazy. But anyway, okay, so the Iliad, many of you have probably read this before, or at least heard of it. So this dates back to about the 8th century BCE, composed by Homer, and this tells the story of Achilles, for the most part. The Iliad is almost all about Achilles. And Achilles is another hero. He was played by Brad Pitt in the 2004 movie. And if you can't watch it, I bought this one on sale somewhere. If you can't stream it, I know it's on Amazon. I tried to find it on YouTube and I can't. But it's kind of terrible, but it's also pretty interesting. My students always like it. I always show it in my class just so you can have some pictures in your mind of these characters and so you can see the fall of the city, because really it's all about the fall of Troy. And while the Iliad stops right before Troy falls, they start talking about it a lot in the Aeneid, and so it's good to know the backstory. Okay, so terms to know. Epithet. Epithet is just a term when they use these words to describe the same characters over and over and over. An epithet. So you'll see in here, Achilles is called Achilles the Great Runner, or the Great Runner Achilles, or Achilles strong and fast, or something like that. Achilles strong and godlike. In here, Achilles strong, swift, and godlike. The epithet is those descriptive adjectives following his name. So I would be like Miss Wessels, short and fast talking, or something like that. Or short Miss Wessels who talks really fast in class. That would be like my epithet, would just be those descriptive adjectives. So that is an epithet. Polytheism, we already know, right? A society that believes in multiple gods. And epic simile is the next one. You know, a simile is when you compare something and you use like or as. Well, an epic simile is just a really long one of those. And I don't even have the text highlighted, but I don't know if it's on the quiz or not, but it's just something I think you need to know. There's a point where they're talking about something happening, and it's a simile that keeps going. You come in like the night, before the rain, after the storm, before the dawn. We're just comparing one person to the night, but it just kept going. It was like 4 sentences. That's an epic simile. Dactylic hexameter, I'm not going to go into. You can Google it if you want to, but it won't be on the quiz or test. I just think it's kind of something fun to talk about in class, but we're not in class, we're online. Muse, M-U-S-E. A muse is something that you need to know. A muse, if you think about an artist, even today, like, and this is the worst example ever, but even today, like, Kim Kardashian is the muse to Kanye West. Like, what happened? Sorry, I'm adjusting this. Sorry, it's driving me nuts. So, like, what happened in our life that Kim Kardashian is the muse to Kanye? I don't know. But a muse is someone that is thought to inspire artists. So, since the Iliad was something that was sung in these bards, and people would sing it and recite it to entertain people, because they didn't have, like, Netflix and all that kind of fun stuff, they would start asking the muses to give them inspiration. And the very first line, and this one's on the quiz, the very first line of the Iliad is rage. And the second line is, sing, goddess, Achilles' rage, black and murderous, that cost the Greeks incalculable pain, pitched countless souls of heroes into Hades dark. and left their bodies to rot as feasts for dogs and birds, as Zeus's will was done. The very first line is just rage. So we know rage or anger is going to be a big part of the Iliad, and then sing goddess. And so the goddess there is asking the muses, the goddesses, the goddess of the muse to inspire them. So we got that muse done. Epic. You know what an epic is. We just talked about it. We just did Gilgamesh. In media res, just know that this term means in the middle of things. And it applies for the Iliad, and it kind of applies to the Aeneid, and it also applies for Oedipus. So it just means that the story picks up in the middle of things, when things had already been happening. So, for example, when the Iliad starts, this war that has been going on between the Greeks and the Trojans, the Greeks and the Trojans for already like 10 years. It's been happening forever. But if you watch Troy, it kind of messes that timeline up. Like, we think Helen ran off with Paris and then the war started. When really, Helen ran off with Paris, and then we had almost a decade of all these little wars happening before the fall of Troy finally occurs. So we have a long time. So the poem starts in the middle of this, or toward the end of this war. The war has already been happening for 10 years. And the big issue is that they have captured Chryseis and Briseis from one of the temples. And Briseis has been taken as Achilles' trophy, sex slave, girlfriend by force, like whatever you want to call it. And Briseis has been kept by Agamemnon. And so Briseis is with Achilles, Chryseis is not. So Chryseis' father comes out and he says to Agamemnon, "Sons of Atreus and Greek heroes all, may the gods on Olympus grant you plunder of Priam's city and a safe return home. But give me my daughter back and accept this ransom out of respect for Zeus' son, Lord Apollo, who deals death from afar." So her dad kind of threatens, "I hope you all do well, but give me back my daughter, or things are going to go down with Zeus." And he is considered a priest. So the crowd murmurs, "Respect the priest, but take the ransom." And Agamemnon was not pleased, and he tells her that he's going to keep her forever, and tells him to get the heck out of there. And then Apollo hears that Agamemnon has refused. Apollo's the god, right? There's lots of gods in the story. Apollo has heard that they refuse, and they start losing in the war. And so finally, the priests and the other people that are helping Agamemnon finally say, "We need to let her go, because the war, obviously Apollo and the gods are not on our side right now, so please let Chryseis go." So he lets Agamemnon, who's like not the king, but he's like the head of the armies and kind of a king. Agamemnon finally says, "Oh, fine, I'll let Chryseis go, but I'm going to want Briseis." And this is where the issue comes, because Achilles does not want to give up his girl. And he loses his ever-loving mind, that he has to give her up. And he completely freaks out. And he is somebody, I think Brad Pitt was probably a good example, because when I talk about him now, I still, like Achilles, I see Brad Pitt in my head. And Achilles is someone who is kind of a demigod, right? Like his mother is a goddess, his father was a warrior. He is not immortal, but seems to be. We don't know yet what his downfall will be. You all know, it's his heel. So, but he is the best fighter that they have, and once he loses his girl to Agamemnon, he decides to sit out. But first he goes off on Agamemnon, just completely goes off on him and says that he's not going to lift a finger, he's not going to fight it off. He said, he keeps calling her a prize, and I'm about to sneeze. Sorry. I'm not technology savvy enough to pause it and keep going. So he flips out on him. He calls him a dog face. He calls her the prize. He says, "Now you're threatening to take away my prize that I sweated for and the Greeks gave me." yes, you were murdering people and you stole her, but I mean, are women really prizes? I never get a prize equal to yours when the army captures one of the Trojan strongholds. No, I do all the dirty work with my own hands. When the battle's over and we divide the loot, you get the lion's share. I go back to the ships with some pitiful little thing, so worn out from fighting that I don't have even the strength left to complain. So he says, I do all the dirty work. I do all the fighting. You're just the commander. You're taking my prize, and now I'm done. Agamemnon basically tells him, go, we don't care. We're not going to miss you. So Achilles goes and he cries to his mom for the longest. Oh, sorry. I'd get up at 7, take my daughter to the dentist. I'm dying. So she takes... sorry, so I'm losing my train of thought. So Achilles goes to his mother and she soothes him and she tells him not to fight with Agamemnon and just stop worrying about it. But then he has another run where he goes off on Agamemnon. And so basically that's kind of where we stop. So we know that Achilles is not fighting because Agamemnon took his girl. Achilles just does not want to participate because of his thing for Briseis. And then so they start losing all their battles. Sorry, I keep looking down at this. So they keep losing all their battles. And they try to get Achilles to come back and fight, and Achilles just doesn't want to. So then there's a part that you actually get to see in Troy, which is pretty cool. So Patroclus is Achilles' like best friend / little brother. And in one of the battles, he goes in and he dons Achilles' armor because the Trojans have heard that Achilles isn't fighting, and so they're like, yeah, because Achilles is a Greek, right? So the Trojans are all hyped up, like, yeah, the best fighter's not here, we're gonna kill you all. So Patroclus wears Achilles' armor, he gets killed. They think, oh my gosh, we killed Achilles for a second, but then they take off his helmet and they realize it's not Achilles. And Achilles, again, loses the ever-loving mind because, remember, the point of the Iliad is rage and revenge. Like, this is not a happy story. This is all about fighting and killing. So, once Achilles wants to get revenge on the death, revenge for the death of his friend Patroclus, he is going to fight Paris. And it doesn't work. And then Hector comes in, who is like the prince. He's played by Eric Bana, which I really like that character too if you watch the movie. So he goes to fight. They all go to fight. And long story short, watch the fight clip. I might post it on the page. But what happens is that Achilles ends up killing Hector. And not only does he kill Hector, but he drags his body out and abuses it. He drags it with a horse. It's all brutal and mangled. And then when the poem ends, Hector's father, Priam, who's the king of the Trojans, has come into the Greek camp. He's snuck in somehow. And all he wants is his son's body back for burial. So he goes to talk to Achilles kind of like man to man. And he says that he would like his son's body back so he could give it a proper burial. And he appeals to Achilles. I'm not sure even what it is, that he finally, his inner human, his inner mortal. At the same time, all the gods are all still fighting in Olympus. But Priam comes in and he begs him just for the body. He says, come here. Oh, sorry. I wish all of you had been killed by the ships instead of Hector. I have no luck at all. I fathered the best sons in all wide Troy. Not one I say is left. So he's very upset. And he goes and he finally talks to Achilles. And Achilles does give him the body by the end. he says, "Your son is released, sir, as you ordered. He's lying on a pallet at dawn's first light. You will go and see him yourself." And he tells him to, he says, at first they say that they're going to take a break from fighting, but that's not really going to happen. But Priam says to Achilles, if you really want me to bury my Hector, then you could do this for me, Achilles. You know we are pendant in the city, far from timber, and the Trojans are afraid. We will mourn for him for 9 days in our halls and bury him on our 10th. Feast over the people. On the 11th, we will heap a barrow over him. And on the 12th, we will fight. So he asks for a break. And we don't see this in the movie Troy, if you watch it. But he does ask for a break in the fighting. He says, look, we want to mourn the death of Hector, so we need to just kind of have like a temporary break. We just need to have this 10, 12 days so we can do the proper burial and the feasting and get rid of the body. And Achilles says, okay. And so this is where the poem, the Iliad, ends. But then let me tell you. So then, and this is like the backstory for the Aeneid. So we've all heard of the Trojan horse, and if you watch Troy, you'll get to see it. So after the 10 to 12 days where they have the break in fighting, what the Greeks are doing is building a giant horse made of wood. Giant horse. And it gets left at the gates of Troy because the city of Troy has walls all the way, against my hands, all the ways around it. And they know that nobody can break their walls. As much as the Greeks want to, they're never going to get through and destroy those walls. So what the Greeks do is they build this giant horse. And the horse, as you all know, I think from pop culture, from anything you may have seen, the horse is not empty, it is filled with soldiers. And the Trojans, and we'll see this later in the Aeneid, the Trojans don't know what to make of this giant wooden horse that is left at their gates. And somebody finally convinces them, and we'll talk more about that later, that it is a gift from the gods and that it's good luck. Well, as we know, it wasn't. And the Trojans are so, I don't want to say naive, but they're just so accepting, and they're just so kind of, not gullible, but kind of, they think that this is a good thing. They actually remove part of their wall because the horse is so big it can't go through the gate, so they literally remove a section of their wall to get the Trojan horse in. Oh, we all know how that ends. And if you watch Troy, you'll get to see it happen. But as far as reading the Iliad, you can read the couple chapters in your book if you want, or I would find a summary, because I'm really just going to ask you more to do a close reading on the few passages that I selected in your quiz. I think only 2 or 3 questions are just over the terms to know. Everything else is where you read a passage and then you answer a question about that passage. So if you have any problems, let me know. Print off the study guide. Watch the film if you get a chance. It's not required, but it will help you out an awful lot. And I will go ahead and post a quick summary of Oedipus. Probably not today, though, since we're going to kind of smash through it next week, by the end of this week, so you can get a head start. All right, talk to y'all later. Have a good day. Bye.